Welcome to One-on-One, the Daily Items weekly digital program featuring Susquehanna Valley newsmakers interviewed by Daily Item reporters. Today's guest is Laura Mentch, a pharmacist at Nature's Medicine, a newly opened dispensary in Shamokin Dam, interviewed by Rick Dandis.
The Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, Certified Hyundai and Lincoln Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Ian Chikuski, Certified Ford Sales Professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford Certified Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
Welcome to another edition of One-on-One. I'm Rick Dandis, and today we're speaking with Laura Mentch, who is a pharmacist with Nature's Medicines. You are a medical marijuana pharmacist.
I am.
And it's a new facility that's opening up in Shamokin Dam.
It is. It opens tomorrow.
Okay. Maybe you should tell people it's a dispensary, which means you don't grow anything.
Correct. We purchase our inventory from other grower processors. We are a dispensary only, so we don't have a grow facility on site.
Okay, so the patient comes to you, and you have the product, so to speak, there.
We do, yes.
Okay. Before we even begin that, how does one become a medical marijuana pharmacist? If you can just briefly tell people.
Well, it's really a new industry, especially on the East Coast and here in the United States. But you have to be a registered pharmacist, active in the state that you want to be practicing in good standing, first and foremost. So normally you don't go to school directly to be a medical marijuana pharmacist. You're a pharmacist who ends up in the industry from somewhere else. As long as you're a registered pharmacist in good standing in that state, you can take a certification course that the Department of Health offers. And when you pass that course, you've met the requirements for the education for that piece. There are several other additional certifications that you can get voluntarily, and depending on what dispensary you decide to apply to, they may ask you to do those other certifications, either at their cost or at your own.
You told me you did quite a few preparing.
Yes. When I decided to explore this as a career, I decided that the best thing to do was sort of jump in with both feet. So I had gone to a conference in Las Vegas last November to see everything that I could learn about the industry, and it was eye-opening. It covered everything from seed to sale, so growing, nutrients, oxygen, security, storage, all of the requirements and regulations, and it was really interesting to see how it differed from state to state and whether the state was recreational or only medical or both.
Okay. Now I think we should talk a little about how a patient gets to use your service, maybe from the doctor to when they walk in the door and see you. So could you go through the process?
Sure. There's a few different avenues. Some patients, physicians are on board with medical marijuana as an alternative treatment, and some are not. Your primary care physician does not have to be your qualifying physician. There are very few physicians that are in the program, say in Northumberland County. I think there's only 6 or 8. So you can find one of those physicians on the Department of Health's website, the same place that you can get your certification. A physician must be a certified physician to be able to enroll patients into the program. You find a physician that is willing to take you on as a patient, certify your symptoms. So there's 23, I believe it is now, qualifying diagnosis. So you have to have a qualifying diagnosis. You have to have a physician who is willing to verify that qualifying diagnosis. They have to put you in the system on their end. You have to go into the Department of Health's website and also apply. And then when those two pieces come together and you're verified, you'll get your card in the mail.
So you have to apply to the state.
Right. The patient themselves has to ask to be enrolled in the program, and they have to have a provider that will also verify their qualifying diagnosis.
Okay. And then they get a card from the state?
They get a card.
And then they can go to a dispensary?
They can. Most dispensaries will ask for your card and a valid picture ID.
Yeah.
and you'll have to present them. You can't bring a spouse or a friend with you, only if they have a caregiver's card, and they can qualify. They can apply for a caregiver's card the same way that you applied for your card. That way, if you had say a disease state that ended up you were bedridden
Right.
and unable to come to the dispensary for your own product, your caregiver could purchase for you. But that is the only way that they could pick up for you, is if they have the card.
So someone comes to Nature's Medicine,
Mhm.
and they walk in the door, and what happens next? Do they see you first? Do they have a pre-interview? What happens?
Some dispensaries will have you see the pharmacist. If you're new to that dispensary, you'll have to have a conversation with the pharmacist. Often they're freestanding, only one dispensary and not a chain. Other dispensaries that are part of a chain of dispensaries, if you've been to, say, a different Nature's Medicine and you come to ours and you've already had your consult with the pharmacist at another of our locations, you wouldn't need to have another conversation with the pharmacist.
Well, what happens with the conversation? What do you
Once-
guys talk about?
It depends on what kind of patient I have, but let's say that you're an elderly patient who has really bad spinal stenosis, and the pain medication that you're on is just not helping enough with the pain, or makes you feel the side effects are intolerable. I have some patients that are willing to try alternatives and end up in front of me for a consult. We go through the history of why cannabis has been used medicinally, especially in Western medicine, for hundreds of years.
So you give them a bit of an educational
I do,
background.
so that they understand how it works and why it works. And then we discuss what dosage forms they would be willing to try. It comes in inhaled products, tinctures that you would put under your tongue. It comes in capsules, and different other, say, inhaled products, or things that you can put on the side of your cheek, or things like that. So some patients will come and they don't want to do any inhaled products. So if that's taken off the table, then we'll discuss, and we come to an agreement on what they would be willing to try from a dosage form standpoint. I try to explain the advantages to all of the different dosage forms, because though they may not want to do inhaled products, they're the fastest onset of action.
We're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay. So we discuss what
Are
they're
you
willing.
constantly making notes? I mean, do you have about each patient? I would assume.
Well,
do you adjust things, I guess, as you go?
for myself, I definitely have some reference material that I have at hand. It depends. I'm used to certain ailments like chronic pain. I'm used to anxiety, depression, PTSD. Those are very repetitive diagnosis that I see. But every now and then I'll get something that I haven't run across. Now Tourette's just made it as a qualifying diagnosis recently, so that's something that I started reading about to see what avenue I would take for recommendations. Anything that has to do with pediatric patients, I'm always careful
Sure.
to do some research and keep some notes on. But we basically come to an agreement on where to start conservatively for anyone that is a new patient, completely new to it. If you've been to other dispensaries before, but you wanted to have a consult again, maybe you just want to see what this pharmacist has to say, or are looking for other recommendations, we can change the ratio of different products to see if something would help you better. I just listen. We try to treat the symptoms. So your qualifying diagnosis doesn't necessarily tell me what's bothering you. If you tell me you have PTSD, that doesn't tell me. I need to know what your symptoms are. So is it sleep related? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? If it's pain, where is the pain? Is it inflammatory pain or bone pain? So then we really treat the symptoms of what is bothering you and give you a variety of tools to have in your toolbox on any given day. The important thing is to let the patient know that they're in charge of adjusting their dose based on how they feel that day. Some days the pain is worse than others. They may need a little more medication, and that's different than traditional medicine, where the dose is the dose every day and you don't deviate.
Okay, well, we'll be right back with Laura Mentch. But one of the things I want to talk about that really struck me when you and I spoke the other day is how you're giving power to the patient,
Yes.
and I like that.
Yeah.
So we're speaking with Laura Mentch. We'll be right back with more of this conversation.
Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, certified Hyundai and Lincoln sales consultant, Selinsgrove High School.
Ian Chakosky, certified Ford sales professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford certified sales consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
We're back with Laura Mentch. Laura's with Nature's Medicine, a medical marijuana dispensary which is newly opened in Shamokin Dam. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's just briefly talk about some of the various ailments and what you see as some effective dosages that deal with maybe pain or.
Okay. Often, what I see most often is chronic pain, patients that want to get off opioid reduction, and PTSD in various forms of anxiety and depression. Those are definitely my hot diagnosis that I see a lot of patients that come for. Pain is different for everyone, and it depends on its originating area. So if it's bone pain versus a joint pain, for instance, we would treat it differently. Bone pain or post-surgical pain or anything that you would have implanted, rods in your back, things like that, that sort of pain is treated a certain way. Say with THC is really beneficial for bone pain. THC is also good for, say, nausea and vomiting or appetite loss with, say, chemotherapy treatments. Whereas CBD is better for an inflammatory pain, joint pains, for autoimmune diseases like Lyme's disease or fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis. And there's ways, combinations of ways to use those to decrease any kind of side effects that would come from THC, like inability to focus or a head high. You can temper that by adding CBD to it. So patients can still get the benefits of THC without being less than functional if you add a CBD element to it. Anxiety and depression, CBD is great for. So we see a lot of PTSD, post-war vets or say domestic violence victims that have trouble sleeping or have some anxiety attacks or social anxiety. CBD is great for that. There are different strains that work well for different symptoms as well, and a lot of that is coming back to us from the patients, a lot of anecdotal evidence of what is working, and really that's how it's getting out there. Until the medical studies come through, it's patients talking to patients on different forums and in the dispensaries themselves, in the waiting rooms. They discuss what has worked for them for their symptoms.
Okay, well, as we said before the break, you're really giving power to the patient.
Yes.
And you're offering options.
Absolutely.
And working with them constantly.
So what's important to remember is that every day isn't the same for patients' symptoms. So some days, if you ask an arthritis patient, on a damp, cold day, their pain is going to be more severe than on a day that's dry and sunny. Some patients' anxiety is worse during holidays or during different times of their lives than it is on any other given day. The beauty of this is that the patient can have the power to adjust their dose based on what kind of day they're having. So there's an ability there where it's not restricted to just what was written by the physician. You have some room to play with your dose, whether it's an increase of another quarter dropper of your tincture because your pain is just unbearable today, or you got up in the middle of the night and that's unusual and you're having trouble getting back to sleep. There are ways to adjust that. So it's really nice that the patient has the ability to adjust it based on how they're feeling and giving them the power back to work with their own symptoms. And I think that's important. That really draws people in. They like to have the power back to help themselves.
And then finally, at a dispensary, they're what's called PSRs. What does a PSR stand for?
Well, it's
patients.
They're going to be your frontline staff who are going to help you pick your products. So when I'm finished with my recommendation, there's a web-based notation in MJ platform, we call it, where they can see exactly what I've recommended to the patient. So the patient doesn't have to go back up to the counter and then have a conversation again about everything that they
Right.
just talked about. So my recommendations would be in there, and then they'll be able to bring those products forward, choose different companies that have similar products. Maybe it's a cost thing, maybe it's the way something is described as
Sure.
a taste or a smell, and they can help them pick products. Now the pharmacist is always there if they wanted to be pulled back in for any real specific recommendations, but for the most part we recommend ratios of items and not necessarily an exact product. There's so many different products available now from different companies that it really comes down to, again, patient choice.
Okay. Well, listen, we've been speaking with Laura Mentch with Nature's Medicine. Laura is a medical marijuana pharmacist. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in next time